And Happy New Year to the world out there. Gentlemen, Happy New Year.
Good day, good sirs.
I am happy to say we are starting the year off with playoffs. We're starting the year off with more football, which is always a great thing.
You know, if you're playing in January, you've done something right.
And you know
Nothing better than playoff football.
There's a couple things that I'm kind of sad about. One, as much as I hate it, there is no more Thursday night football, so you don't have kind of something driving you to the end of the week. There's no Monday night football, so it's really like when Sunday's done, like it's done. You gotta wait until next week. But in the playoffs, we do get Saturday games, so that's kind of cool, right? That's something.
It is.
I don't miss Thursday football at all.
I don't miss Thursday football because of the fact that it's bad for the players. It's generally a worse product, but I like knowing that there's something to look forward to, right? It's a milestone for the week.
I get it.
But again, I totally agree with you. It really is a bad product.
I just want the old days.
It wasn't bad this year. Thursday night this year was pretty good most of the
time. There were good games. I just don't like football like 3 nights a week. I love football, but you know, some things it's better. Like, I don't know. Just because it's like I like steak, but I don't want to eat steak 6 days a week.
Right.
But if you're getting really good steak, maybe that would change your mind. And also, like, one of those steaks is not going to give you food poisoning for the rest of the week. That's kind of Thursday night football.
Well, I think you can burn out, and I think you can also take up too much of your time. Like, there's only so many hours a week certain people, most people can devote to watching football.
Yeah, and I think you provide a special case where it's not you're not living in the United States, so watching a Thursday night game is a totally different level of commitment for you than other people.
Yeah, I mean, it's just one more morning out of the. I mean, it's Friday morning from 10 o'clock for me. It's like one more day. I guess I'm not working today. I'm not working Mondays. I'm working Fridays. Football's really interfering with this whole like make a living thing.
Yeah, but Happy New Year to everyone out there listening. We are the Hawkscast podcast. Check us out on Twitter at Seahawks Forum or Seahawks Podcast, or go to hawkscast.com. Apologies for not being able to broadcast last week. There was this little thing called Christmas in the way, so Merry Christmas to everyone for those that celebrate. And we're here on New Year's Day talking about the Seahawks, talking about the playoffs, and we're talking about that game that just happened. It was the last game of 2019, and it was one of the more Seahawk finishes that we've seen. Would you guys put it that way?
Kinda, except the fact that it was a Seahawk ending at the end, like Hollister's in the end zone, right? Because close games, we were like 10-1. That's a Seahawk ending.
Yeah, I was fully sure they were going to score there.
Yeah, there's a lot about that game that, they come out. I don't know if they came out flat because they didn't look terrible in the first half, but they just couldn't string like 2 plays together back to back. It'd be like one okay play, and then the pass rush would just get there. Russ gets flushed. He can't do anything, and we're stuffed. Or we'll have a good play. We'd get a running play up there, but then the defense would just collapse, and the offensive line couldn't get any push, and the run didn't go anywhere. Like that first half just looks so stilted. I don't know what the best way to describe it is, but it looked like
third down can totally change your perception of what's happening. You can be, like you said, it didn't look like they were doing terrible, but if you just happen to have, if your one play out of 3 that doesn't work well is your third down play, then you're not going to get, you don't get the next series, you don't get your drive stalls, and so you end up like only getting a few plays in, and I mean, it's stated obvious the third down is super important, but it just can completely change your perception of what's happening, and you change your ability to do what you want to do. I don't think people think about that on the level that is like literally you can gain 5 yards on the first down, then have like a decent pass that just doesn't happen to connect the second down, third down you mess up, or it doesn't go well, or the other team does something right, and all of a sudden now you only got to run 3 plays and you're off the field, and it could just totally mess with everything. People, I don't. People tend to like just treat the downs as just downs, but you really like the conversion to the down you're going to count on to make your conversion over to the first down is, man, it's everything. Anyway,
so
before
before the final play, just a quick question: like, did you guys feel like, oh, this is going to be a classic game? We're going to drive down the field and we're going to score. Is that what you all thought?
That's exactly what I thought.
I thought that at the beginning of the drive. I thought that's what's going to happen. But somehow, when I got to that last couple plays, I could barely watch. I looked down. I did finally watch, but I got pessimistic all of a sudden. I don't know why, but
yeah. I'm more like you, Zeb. I thought, oh man, we're gonna get the ball on the 1. We're gonna get 3 shots to win this game at the half-yard line. We're in. Even when they got the delay penalty, and we'll talk about that. But even after the delay, it's like, look, 5.5 to a yard. It's not that much difference. It's actually, I feel, a little bit easier because you have a little bit more space to run a play. But yeah, it didn't work out, and there was a bunch of series of things that definitely impacted what we ended up seeing as that game. Birdfinger chiming in on the chat saying that the delay shook his faith a bit, and I get that. But it was a good game. I think if you're an NFL fan, you were entertained for most of it, and it was very dramatic, and the ending was more dramatic because of what transpired.
Yeah, it was dramatic, all right. They definitely put on a show.
Yeah, I mean, the whole country was probably watching, and the whole country must have just, that was a fitting end to a great season, a great game, and it really sets the table for an interesting playoffs.
When the Seahawks were down 2 scores, they were down, I think at that point, 13 points at one juncture. Did you lose faith that they were like, oh man, we're down 2 scores, I don't know if we have enough? Because I always felt like, look, if we can get back to 1 score, we've got a chance, and that's all that this team really needs. And I thought that's what they had continued to do really well, and why I felt for the most part I was very confident that they were going to be able to pull it off.
I mean, I was more confident before the game than I was by halftime, because I was starting to worry if we just didn't have the horses. I mean, it's no secret we're beat up. We're down to our 4th string running back and a guy who was on the sofa last week, and not only was he on the street, he was doing tequila shots in Oakland with the fans because it was the last home game for the Raiders. That's what he was doing. Right. And, and we're using a tight end that was a practice squad guy not too long ago. And we brought in Gordon, and he's suspended. And obviously Britt's out, and our left tackle's out, and Diggs is out, and Shaquille Griffin is not himself right now. I would say he came back and played, but he still doesn't look right. So I was just like, if we lose, I mean, to be honest, after last week's game, I was just like, it's a shame, but maybe that's how the season goes down. We were doing great. We were on a roll. I was so confident. I bought my tickets, assuming we'd have like home field play, home field advantage. But we just, we ran out of players.
Ran out of healthy bodies.
Yeah. And so I was like, that's where we're at. And if that means we lose to the 49ers this way, it's not fun. But that's why, by the end of the game, I wasn't suicidal at all. I didn't need anybody to talk me off the ledge at all. I was like, if anything, I was encouraged by that game. Like, despite all those injuries, we hung in there. We were right there. I was looking at people going, oh, we lost this. Like, I'm just going like, man, would everybody's perception have been changed by 3 inches? If Hollister gets in, all of a sudden we're amazing. We didn't get it, so, the team sucks. I mean, it's 3 inches. We hung in there against the team that a lot of people are calling the Super Bowl favorites because of those 3 inches as well, because I don't think they'd be saying that if they'd lost. It's just so irrational. The fact is, what you come away with is we belong. We belong in that same club, right?
I think so. And I think that's kind of where I am at this point is like the Seahawks already had a playoff locked up. It would have been great because it would have been a division title. It would have been another home game for Seattle to host the Vikings if they had won. It would have made it so that the Niners would have had to go on the road. But I think the Niners and the Seahawks have shown that the margin of error between both of these teams is pretty small, and that's encouraging, knowing with how depleted Seattle is. So I feel very promising about that. Birdfinger chiming in again saying I was unusually positive after seeing only a 13-point lead at halftime. Kind of crazy to think that
That's
they were down.
true. He was.
And then also, he was encouraged too that the Hawks can't beat them, and I think that's what this game showed is that it didn't take a miracle to beat this team. It just needed them to execute, and that's maybe one of the flaws of this team. Like just inability to consistently execute what they need to have done.
Did you see the quote? I don't think it got much attention, and it was put in the middle of it was in the middle of a paragraph of a whole quote. But there was a sentence by Mike Shanahan saying, "I don't know how they do it, but like they're in every game." Like he probably looks at the roster and especially as our roster stood last week, and really actually just couldn't understand how we could sit in the middle of the ring going toe to toe with them and be in it. He's like it's a very Seahawk thing, it's a very Seattle thing, but they're always in it. And like I said, it didn't get much attention because it was in the middle of some other stuff he was saying, but I was really proud of that.
Was that Kyle Shanahan or Mike Shanahan that said that?
Sorry, Kyle Shanahan.
Okay, I was going to say I was
showing my age. Sorry.
No, and I actually have a good topic, so I have a good idea that I do want to talk about that moving forward. But real quick, the Seahawks had the NFC West within their grasp, but after a 4th down catch at the half-yard line, a delay of game, a non-PA called on 3rd down, and a catch just short of the goal line left the Seahawks as the number 5 seed, while the Niners took the number 1 seed. The Seahawks will travel to the one team that is potentially more hurt with player injuries, the Philadelphia Eagles. Early week injuries already look pretty bad for both teams. This is the Hawkscast podcast brought to you by the Hawkscast Forum, and we got a bunch of stuff to talk about. So I do want to jump into it, and Zeb, I want to know from you, how would you grade the 2019 season? 2020 is the playoffs. It's a brand new game. Every team is winless. How would you grade this team and break it down however you like?
Well, obviously this could change over the next few weeks depending on how things go, but I'd give them a solid B. I think they exceeded expectations, most people's expectations, finishing the way that they did and getting into the playoffs and even having a shot at the division in the final game. I don't think at the beginning of the year, Baldwin having retired, still some uncertainty in our secondary and that sort of thing. I don't think anybody was guaranteeing a division win. So I think overall the team exceeded expectations, and I think the only reason why I don't give them an A at this point is because I do think the trend of starting slow, playing those close games, and kind of having to rely on maybe a missed field goal here and there to win a game, it's not ideal. It's exciting, and a win is a win, but ultimately you'd like to see this team kind of be able to put opponents away a little better, and that's what keeps me going higher than it.
Real quick, you brought up the point about the missed field goal, and that's the one game where the opposing offense had the ball with a chance to win it at the end. Is there any other game this year where the opposing offense, had the ball and the clock ran out on them?
I'm not sure. Off the top of my head, I can't think of it.
Okay.
But I was definitely thinking during that Niners game how we typically tend to be the ones in position to go and win the game at the end with our offense, and I trust them to do it.
But isn't that interesting how that always seems to come about? Because it's not just this year. If you think most years there's not as many opportunities where there's a minute and a half left and we give them the ball and it's their turn to try to do it, right? It's always us.
I mean, it happens. They just don't usually do it, and it's not as memorable.
I mean, to be honest, like actually on Sunday, I was a little bit afraid because they got down to around the 13-yard line or 15-yard line with about a minute 27 to go, and I'm like, don't score yet. Like don't give them a minute to get it because it's the modern NFL. You know, field goal kickers are pretty reliable, long range. They only need to get to the 35 maybe, and I'm like, don't score. You like
don't score too early. I felt the same way too.
It's like hand off the ball to Homer up the gut and then score because it looked like at that point. And then after they got to 4th and 10, I was like, okay, well we're in trouble here now. Then they made that, and then the rest was history. Yeah, I mean, obviously, like you said, some of it's perception. We don't remember as well when the other team gets the ball, but it just seems like almost every week in and week out, it's we either get the ball for the final possession or we're able to put it away, and so I don't see as many opportunities for like the other team. We team. I don't know. We seem to control the clock pretty well most of the time.
What grade would you give everybody, Ross? What grade would you give the team? How would you rate this season?
It's really hard. It's a simple question, but it's if you go into it like with the elementary school teacher grading their students kind of thing, like it's not really fair to grade them. Like 4 weeks ago, I would have given them an A. Today, you lose 3 out of the last 4. I know it's injuries, so I want to give the defense like a C+, and I want to give the offense a B+. And special teams, I don't know what to make.
Present. They get a present.
Yeah. So suddenly, I had to give to be generic, to be that guy, I guess I'll go with Zeb and just say B as well. But I will say that a few weeks ago, I was looking like giving them, if this roster was 12-4, that feels so different than 11-5, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And we could have beat the Cardinals. We should have beat the Cardinals. Come on. We could have and should have arguably beat them. We could have been 13. So, through week 12, I'd probably give an A, and then the last few weeks, I'd give like a C-. Even though you're dealing with injuries, it was right there. So that's my only concerning point is that, the great teams, when the opportunity is right in front of them, they grab it. So, but things happen in the season.
Right.
So, yeah. I'm a little disappointed. If I want to go to individual, the defensive line just never has found a way to pass rush, ever. I kept waiting every week for it to come around. We had a couple signs, but it's not really there. Although I think with Dix, it's conversely, with a free safety back in the game, our pass rush gets better.
Yeah.
So we'll see. How about you?
I'm on the edge where I probably give him a little bit of a lower grade. I'm gonna give him a B-. And the reason is kind of like what you said. If you falter down the stretch, you're gonna get graded a little bit lower. But what the Seahawks are is they're kind of the student who does great work, but they're really sloppy about it. So if you're willing to kind of dig through the muck, you'll see, oh, here's a great idea, or here's a great concept, or here's like a great answer. But the way you got there was just kind of like bad. Like you did it in a really unorganized, unorthodox, and really hard to replicate way for anyone else to say like, oh, this is what a team is, or this is what it should look like. But that's kind of the Seahawks. They do it in such an unorthodox way. It's to some point maybe aggravating or annoying because like, oh man, if you just tried a little bit harder in this way, you would be an A student. You'd get those 12, 13 wins, no problem. But you keep fucking around and you keep messing up and you're kind of lazy. You don't dot your T's and cross your I's and, you just kind of let some things slide. So I say it's a B- because I think that they showed that they can be that. But because we've never seen a game where they played a full 60 minutes, something that Birdfinger says on the chat as well, I think they get kind of dragged down. Now, that grade could totally change because what they do in the playoffs could totally make a huge impact, especially with this path. But that's how I'd grade them, based upon the things that we were concerned about, they continue to be a concern. We're not really sure what our pass rush is going to look like game in, game out, because the players are not getting the penetration they need, or they're not getting the help they need, or the secondary is a little bit too soft for them, and they can't do anything. So the quarterback has time; they can go through the progression and find the guy down the stretch. And I think that's kind of unfortunate, but B- for them, solid B-.
That's fair.
It's funny because it also depends on sort of how, when. Yeah, I mean, you almost need to define how you're going to grade them, because if we were sitting here in August and I said 11-5, second place in the NFC West, Carson's going to have over 1,200 yards rushing, I think we'd all be really, really happy. I'm still relatively happy.
Oh yeah, I'm very happy as well.
But when it comes to Thanksgiving time and you're sitting there at like 11-2, and you're like, wow, we're going to be one of the potentially best teams of all time, whatever, for Seahawks. And it doesn't, it's just faltering. Some of the games didn't matter. I mean, arguably, the 49ers game in the end doesn't matter that much. We don't get the home game, but we get to play the Philadelphia Eagles, who have 6 people on their roster left.
Yeah.
It doesn't. Arguably, the last 2 games almost didn't matter, except they matter like when you're pride, and they matter when you're evaluating your team. And you didn't want to lose them, so you were trying to win those, and you didn't do it. So it's a hard measure, I think, for me. It's a very for such an easy standard sort of end of the season question. It's a hard question. I don't know what they are.
I think because of the way the season started, and because there are still questions of what this team is, they will always be opening themselves up to like, well, you could have done better, but you didn't, so we're going to kind of like drop you down.
Yeah, I guess any team's like that, though, really.
I think that's fair, and I think that's the thing. Like, people are too willing to give an A grade just because, oh, well, they finally have a winning year, so they get an A. It's like, that's not really what a grade should be like. You should only give A's to teams that are really, really excellent. I
wonder what the Patriot fans are grading their own team.
Yeah, I mean, this is the first time in 8 years they have not had a bye for the playoffs, right?
And they close out the season losing to the Miami Dolphins. Although the Miami Dolphins surged this season. I was like, the last 6 weeks of the season, they had as many wins as almost anybody. So
I'd much rather lose to the Cardinals than lose to the Dolphins. It's a division game. I think the Dolphins are a much worse run organization than the Cardinals are. I mean, the Cardinals have at least been to a Super Bowl in the last decade, as opposed to the Dolphins, which, haven't done anything. So,
yeah, but they have Fitzpatrick.
Fitzmagic, man.
I did win.
Final grades that you want to give out to anyone else, or are we ready to move on?
I'm giving the D line a D.
Man. Gotta give him an A for effort, though, right?
That's Clowney and Ansah, Reed. These are some dudes who were supposed to make some steps this year, and man, our sack leader had 4 sacks. 4. Kendrick's
not enough pass rush for sure. Pass rush was an issue all year.
Yeah, how are they going to fix that?
Play really good coverage, get a bunch of coverage sacks.
Yeah, it's going to have to be.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, let's move on.
Okay, go ahead.
Let's move on to topic number 2. And Ross, I want to know, was the return of Beast Mode everything you thought it would be?
Yeah, but not in the positive. I mean, it wasn't bad at all. But I was hoping for the movie storybook ending kind of, it's going to be great. He's going to come in and run for 100 yards. What if he runs off a Beastquake 3 here? But, I was realistic. I didn't expect the world, and he didn't deliver the world. But his first couple of runs, I was like, oh, my God, he was just on the couch. But he came around. He gave us a couple sparks. He got that touchdown in a way he didn't used to run. He did the 1983 Kurt Warner over-the-top deal. And that's cool to see, because that actually gives you hope that, he's got some spring in his step, literally. And that gives me hope for the playoffs. I mean, that's the cool thing, is he doesn't have 16 games of beat up on his body like everybody else does. So, but it was about what I expected. There was a bit of there was a bit of oh, and there was a bit of pop. So I got what I wanted. Although we'll talk about this a little bit later, but that last play that we're all talking about, that might be more on him than anybody's willing to say. So I'll leave it at that. But
Yeah,
I was entertained. And that's what it's about for us, right?
yeah. Zeb, what about you?
Yeah.
Did you look at this return and did you get what you thought what you would see?
Yeah, I mean, I think I got pretty much exactly what I expected out of it. It was good to see him out there. That was the best part, more than anything else. He had a few good runs, but just seeing him out there in the Seahawks uniform just felt fantastic. Obviously, it would have been nice to get him that last touchdown, that game-winning touchdown. It would have kind of been storybook and maybe in some people's eyes, kind of to a certain degree, made up for the whole Super Bowl 49 debacle. But other than that, yeah, I expected him to get, be kind of the second back, get 10 or so carries, and just hope that he would look like he was going to be able to contribute for the rest of the year. And I think he looked exactly. I think he looked just like the guy we remember. So that was very, very encouraging. And just as a side, really cool to see Homer do as well as he did out there, showing his good speed and his apparently pretty good vision, because he was able to hit those holes quickly and ultimately had a pretty good game. So
he looked
if those guys now can stay healthy, I think we're in pretty good shape at the running back position for the rest of the year.
Yeah.
Here's a question for you.
Oh, go ahead.
Who had the longest run, Homer or Lynch? Do you guys know? And this is a question. I'm looking it up right now. I'm asking, who had the longer run, Homer or Lynch?
I think Homer had a 16-yard run, and Lynch's longest run was 15.
Zeb?
I think.
Off the top of your head.
Yeah, that sounds about right. I thought maybe Lynch might have gone for like 17 or 18 on one, but I
think it was
remember
15.
exactly.
So Lynch had a long of 15 yards. Travis Homer had a long of 13 yards. Travis Homer went 10 for 62. Lynch went 12 for 34. So I'm like 100% with you guys. I thought that, it's unrealistic to expect more than... I thought if Lynch got more than 15 games, I thought that would have been really, really crazy. For a guy that had been serving tequila shots in Oakland in their parking lot on the last home game for the Raiders, I don't think that was realistic for him to get a bunch of touches. And we saw that, they really did rely on Travis Homer, because not only did he get 10 rushing attempts, which is, even though it's not as high, he got a lot of the snaps. He had 5 catches. He was targeted 5 times, so he caught all of his targets, which is great. His best runs were kind of like tosses or runs outside instead of running up the middle, which I thought was, again, take advantage of his speed. We really didn't see a lot of that action, I think, until the second half of the game. But with Marshawn, I think what it is, if anything, it provided a moral boost. It got people excited for this game. It helped the fans to kind of feel energized, knowing that, like, hey, we've lost all these bodies on the team. Like, can we really get up for this game? And I think that helped. The highlight, I think, was that touchdown, because we don't really see a lot of running backs that go up the top like that, and that was definitely like a highlight of the game to see him score that touchdown. So that was awesome. But yeah, I think it would have been unreasonable to expect Marshawn to get 20 touches and 100 and get Beast quick 3. Maybe that's something we see in these playoffs if we kind of get that momentum going on. But
when he had like back-to-back 8 yards and then 50, and the 8 yards was like a hard 8 yards, and then right after the next play, this 15-yard carry, like that. I mean, it picked up the crowd, of course, but it seemed to pick up the team as well, didn't it? Like that team feeds off of him, like that, and that's like maybe the underrated thing about him. From in my thing, I haven't always understood is it's not just what he brings, in stats. It's he has that kind of personality that he is another person that elevates the team around him.
I think so, and I think what I remembered about the game is anytime Marshawn didn't see a lot of great yards on the ground, it was just because there's just not a ton of places for him to go. What we've seen about this Seahawks team is in order to get yards, you have to either bust it outside, which we've seen with Penny and now with Homer, or you have to be like Chris Carson, who's going to take that first hit and then be able to get the next one. I think it's unreasonable to expect a guy who hasn't played football all this year to just bowl people over. I thought he was really good with his feet, but, you know, I am encouraged for sure that we can see an improvement over what we saw in this one game so far.
And hey, also, I was glad to not see Robert Turbin have to carry the football.
Dude, how sad would it be if Robert Turbin gets cut for like Alex Collins or someone else?
Dude, when I saw Ajayi I was like, well, isn't that what we want? But apparently not.
Yeah,
I think he's only there to be, because like I feel like he knows the pass pro, right? And so I think he was like insurance. Like if Homer can't pick up blitzes and things like that, then on passing downs, I think Robert Turbin was going to come in.
Yeah.
But Homer, like you said, Homer was 5 for 5 on catching, and he didn't have any obvious catastrophic whiffs blocking. So Robert Turbin
seemed to be good in pass protection for the most part as
right?
well. So
yeah.
So it felt like Robert Turbin like just collected probably something like $80,000 for standing around for 3 hours. So,
but
what if Marshawn told him?
That big.
What if Marshawn told him, "I'll come back, but you got to bring Robert back too"?
I'm like, well, we got 2 spots open. We don't mind.
Okay. I can see Marshawn Lynch doing that in some cases, but are he and Turbin that close? That doesn't seem like somebody he would do that for.
Robert Turbin and Russell Wilson are super close. I know that.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah, but when you listen to Marshawn talk about Turbin during Super Bowl 48, he seemed to think.
Well, that's true. That's true.
So who knows?
Yeah,
I forgot about that. You're right.
Final thoughts on the return of Beast Mode.
Prediction for this week for Beast Mode:
1,800 yards.
Oof.
What did you say?
1,800 yards, a full season's worth in one game.
I mean, I think he's going to get a lot of work because apparently it's going to be a crazy, super windy.
Oh yeah, Wasn't it super windy the last time we played in Philly?
Yeah, like that's why you had those crazy passes by Wentz and Wilson that just like what?
Yeah,
and like some bad field goal kicking and.
I expect maybe 15, 17 touches for Marshawn. 13 to 18 for Homer, though.
I think Homer gets more carries.
Yeah.
I think they want Marshawn right around 12.
I think makes sense.
We'll see.
All right. Well, let's move on to topic number 3. So topic number 3, we're going to talk about the Seahawks Twitter. And for those of you that aren't familiar with it, stay away. It's a toxic place. It's just a bunch of weirdos. But we want to talk about it. So Zach, except for our podcast, our forum, and the 3 of us that are on Twitter, everyone else is crazy. Yeah. But Zeb, I want you to take this topic and kind of run with it however you want. And what would the trial of Pete Carroll look like? I feel like this year in particular, Pete's been here for 10 years, and there's some fans that are still loving what we're getting, and there's some fans saying it's not enough, we're ready to move on. So what would the trial of Pete Carroll look like in your eyes?
Well, first of all, I'll say that I, for the most part, stay away from Seahawks Twitter because there's not much I like less than listen to a bunch of dudes who think they know more than the actual coaches do about how the game of football is supposed to work.
That's the most frustrating part, isn't it?
Pete Carroll, for as much as he brings, for as successful as he's been here, and the things we know he does good, he's got a few little things that he seems to not do great. And listening to you, Ross, about Pete's philosophy, where I've learned more about it from you than on my own. It's the things that he's not very good at, he doesn't seem to care about very much, right? It's like that's not important to him. Right. That's why he's not very good at it. People have really gotten on Pete's head for clock management towards the end of the half, and that kind of showed up again in this game against the 49ers. I don't know. It seems like a simple thing, but they always seem to burn a timeout or two too early. And Ross, you've expressed frustration with that, where like, why waste timeout over 5 yards, something like that. So I get it, but still, I don't feel like this game was lost because of clock management or anything like that. We had multiple opportunities to score a touchdown at the end, weren't able to. So even though there were mistakes made there with the delay game and not having any timeouts left, I don't feel like those things were particularly detrimental to the game itself. So one thing that I'd heard, people were. Now this wasn't a lot of people. I saw a couple different people who wanted to rest starters this game because basically we're in the playoffs. We're probably not going to beat the 49ers. We're injured. We're probably better off going to play Philly on the road anyway. Rest guys. Let's not get anybody else hurt. My brother sent me a text at one point and says, if one more person gets injured, I'm calling for Pete's head. And obviously he's, in the game. He's emotional about it, but that was his stance, was like, we basically should have thrown this game. Let the backups play. Let them try their hardest. You never know what could happen, but we need to get healthy. That's the most important thing. And so he was pretty upset at Pete Carroll for that. I disagree. I mean, I get it. I understand. But to me, you play to win the game. If that's the case, then you put your best players out there and do everything we could have and should have won. And yeah, we lost Kendricks. We lost Jerron Brown. That's, moderately big losses depending on which guy you're talking about. But ultimately, that's not something that I look at Pete Carroll and think to myself, that's not doing well as a coach. So I think Pete Carroll's positives, the things he does bring, the success he's had, far outweigh any of his deficiencies or negative.
Nice. Ross, what about you? If I know you're on Twitter a little bit more now, and you're seeing all the madness that's going on, and what would your trial of Pete look like?
Not mine, but what I believe, I think Seahawks Twitter would charge him with a lot of crimes that they consider pretty serious felonies. I think they would charge him with not being with the modern game as far as what a modern offense should look like and what the modern offensive play calling should look like and balance should look like. I think they would charge him with being stubborn. I think they would charge him with mismanaging the clock. I think they would charge him with mismanaging fourth downs. I think they would charge him with misconstructing a roster to be heavy in the wrong areas and light in the areas we want more depth. I think that's what they would charge him with. Like I said, I believe that they believe all of those are pretty serious felonies. How that court case would go down is you get to realize that he's guilty of a few of those things, but it's quite clear that as it works out, they're all misdemeanors. He's guilty of essentially jaywalking. Yeah, he sometimes punts when everybody else thinks he should go for it. But again, like Zeb said, and it's not what he cares about. It's not how he looks at the game, and it's not a Frankenstein's monster. You don't get to create a person out of 10 different people. You get one guy. And it's all, especially with Pete, it's all holistic. Everything else connects to everything else. And that's a strength, not a weakness. But it does mean that if he says always compete and it's always building everybody up and it's always believing in each other and whatever, it means that some cases when you think he should go to somebody else, he's not going to, because he needs to build that player back up, because he thinks he might need that guy to win the game next week. So this week we're going to keep him in the game longer. And people go, oh, well, you should always compete. He is competing. These people have already won their jobs. But as far, like I said, yeah, I mean, Pete has what he has that's important. And he's talking to the media, by the way, is not one of them. So people who were mad about the delay a game penalty were even further infuriated by his explanation for it. But it's curious to me because that's actually something you can charge him with. And again, it's a misdemeanor. It's not he's not responsible to. He's responsible to Jody Allen and John Schneider to a degree. He's not responsible to me, Seahawks Twitter, or anybody else. So he's not going to give us the real answer because he's loyal to his players, and he's not going to throw anybody under the bus. He's loyal to his coaching staff. So even when he's tearing them a new one behind closed doors, he's not going to tell you or me that, because that's not our business, and that's not how he does business. That's not how he handles his business. And frankly, that's not how he should handle his business. When I run a company and I've got a problem with my employee, I don't tell my customers about it. I handle it. In front of my customers or in front of other staff, I build my staff up. And that's the way that's 2020. It's modern management. So I think at the end, the judge would say, yeah, you know what, Pete, give $5 to your favorite charity and, maybe think about occasionally going for it. But that's a misdemeanor. There you go. Case dismissed. Because you can't rip Pete Carroll apart. If you're going to take all the good, how he puts his program together, how he builds his people up, how with a depleted roster that has suffered through 4 years of bad drafting, he's still competing with the 49ers wonderkind. How? Because he's Pete Carroll. Because his philosophy works. Not just because we have Russell Wilson. You can have elite quarterbacks and still not have an elite team. Atlanta Falcons are not going to the playoffs. And Matt Ryan, he's not as good as Russell Wilson, but he's damn good. But they're nowhere near it. It's a whole team. It's a team game. Russ, you got to have the elite quarterback, and that helps. We're never going to have less than 8 wins with Russell Wilson. But those last wins are really, really hard to get. And those are the minutiae. You do everything right, and it's a hard game. And yeah, Pete Carroll's got some weaknesses. Newsflash, every single coach does. The Patriots lose out, actually, on players occasionally because somebody doesn't want to play for Belichick. Or Belichick every once in a while will do something because he outsmarts himself. He's even better. He's probably the best, but I don't think he even enjoys it, so I'd rather be Pete Carroll. But
right. Every
coach has their weaknesses, but you just and you can't cut them out. You just accept them. And that's why I think it's not worth the hand. People think I'm like a super apologist to Pete Carroll. I understand the weaknesses. I see them. I don't get frustrated by them because I understand, like, you just take a coach as a whole, and I'd rather have those flaws than somebody who doesn't have those flaws but doesn't excel in all the other areas, and we're not as good of a record.
I think that's I'm kind of like 100% in both of your camps. To a degree, you look at what Pete has done, you look at how he's doing it, and both to both Zeb's point and to Ross's point, that's kind of what Pete Carroll is. Yeah, he doesn't care about the small details because he knows in a 60-minute game, a lot of those you can overcome, or they're not as impactful because in the moment you're not making the decisions that are going to put you in a bad spot. Like when fans want him to go for it, he's going to punt. When fans want him to play it safe, he's going to be aggressive. And to a degree, people are always going to look at the aftermath. They're not going into the thought process. Ross, we've talked about this all year. Just because the NFL says, like, oh yeah, from a 51-yard field goal, kickers are 75 or 85% going to make it. Well, it doesn't really take into account, well, what kind of wind conditions, what's the field they're playing on, what team are they playing against. It's not a flat percentage. There's so many instances that go into what happens in a football game that can blow everything out of the water. You might be saying, like, well, you know what? You're playing with your backup snapper. Your holder is your third-string quarterback who was an emergency start because your other backup who normally holds is there. Or, you know what? Your punter who normally does the holding, he got a concussion in the game, so he's not going to be there. Those are things that make it so it's not automatic anymore, and that's what a head coach has to take into account. He's not calling the plays. He's not calling the personnel on the field. He's giving both his offensive and defensive coordinators a sandbox to play in, but he's giving them the tools and say, this is how you're going to play in the sandbox, but however you do it, it's how you do it. That's who Pete Carroll is as a coach. And I feel like a lot of people that want to use your terminology, like, charge him with a felony, have a really, really bad understanding of what Pete Carroll is actually in charge of. He's not in charge of a lot of these details that would necessitate like changes or,
I mean, to be honest, that's an important thing, because it's funny. Everybody knows like Pete Carroll's like a defensive guy, but they want to charge him with a whole bunch of offensive stuff. And if you point out to them that he's not really the offensive guy, they'll say, well, he's got his hand in, he's got his hand in, he's got his hand in it. And I mean, even this delay of game penalty, I don't know if people just don't remember from their high school game, or they've never played, or they never really thought about it. But Pete Carroll is not in charge of getting substitutes on the field.
Yeah, that's the offensive coordinator and the position coaches. They're the ones that are responsible for that.
There's probably, I don't know who it is in Seattle, but there's like one particular guy. Once the offensive coordinator calls the play, then another coach sees which package that uses. He calls out the package. He goes, gets the guys. He rounds them up, and he sends them on. Again, Pete Carroll is ultimately responsible, and he's the best at that. He always takes responsibility for that, right?
Yeah.
But that's kind of in a sort of a theoretical way.
But I think the other thing, real quick about Pete Carroll always taking the blame, is people mistake that for actually him saying it was his fault, as opposed to saying, you know what, I'm going to protect my players, I'm going to protect my coach, because I need them to listen to me the next day when we're in a meeting. So I'm going to take the bullet so they don't have to talk to someone and say it was their fault. So
all you're going to do is alienate them if you do it. And it's funny though, because you're right. People use that as evidence, like, oh, but Pete himself said he should have done it different. Pete himself said he was responsible. Pete himself said he messed up. Like, yeah, but again, why is he saying that? He's not obligated to tell the media the truth or what he's really thinking. And in many cases, he shouldn't, because if he goes out and says, Coach B fucked that up, tomorrow when he's in a meeting with Coach B, how's Coach B going to feel?
Right.
Reasonable. Is he going to get the best out of him anymore? No. Because you just throw him under the bus in front of a view matter. Behind closed doors, in a better way, in a better setting, when it's a positive, let's learn from this experience, it'll be a different story. I'm sure there's people who got chewed out this week.
Right.
I'm sure.
The last thing I want to talk about real quick about Pete and the idea of him being on trial is, I feel like there are a lot of people, obviously, we're talking about people and Seahawks Twitter, they're reacting to a loss, they're reacting to an almost win, they're reacting to all these things that could have happened, or they're talking about all the flaws. And what they fail to, at least in my opinion, what they fail to realize is everyone's thinking about emotion or what they think is the best, but there's very rare people that are criticizing Pete. Obviously, the delay of game, that's a big thing that people are talking about and saying, like, yeah, what was the coach thinking, But every player that has ever played the game knows that it's not always the head coach's decision if there's a delay of game, It's whoever's in charge of offensive play calling and who's ever in charge of the personnel. Those are the ones that are going to cause a delay of game, unless there's like a bunch of audibles down the stretch. But because Pete's the head coach, he's going to take that blame. And I think people fail to actually think about how teams are constructed and how they operate. They're just blaming the most visible person, and that in this case is Pete Carroll.
Fully. I mean, and again, he is responsible, but it's just a weird way of looking at it.
Yeah.
I want to say one more thing.
Yeah.
Sorry, real quick about not to harp on the one thing, but it's the one play everybody's talking about this week. We didn't lose because of the delay of game. We still had 3 more shots from the 6. Second of all, like, doesn't it feel like something sort of cosmical weirdness was going on? Because nobody seemed to realize what was going on. If you watch it, even the announcers in the booth don't realize the play clock. They're still talking about, Marshawn Lynch is going to go out on the field, and the play clock's like at 4. And they don't notice it. They don't say like something like, they should hurry up. And Russell Wilson, he's not out there going, because like what Russell Wilson should be doing is if he doesn't have a play at 25 or 20 seconds, He should just be telling everybody with what the personnel he's got, dude, just line up and run this play. We have to do something. But he wasn't doing that. Nobody was doing anything.
Yeah, I feel like everyone thought that the spike was a
timeout.
A timeout, because even the TV jumped away. They didn't even show the players. Only until it was 20 seconds did they show the players on the field. Then you see George Fant on his knee, kind of waving people off.
Yep. I mean, I got mad at Austin Slater for saying it's obvious from the footage it was chaos. I'm like, no, it's not obvious from the footage it was chaos, because the camera, like you said, Sammy, the camera's not even showing what's going on because nobody's into it. It's weird. It's just Marshawn Lynch is about to come on the field and everybody's like in awe of that because they realize oh my God, it's going to be that situation.
Right, which I in that moment I thought that would have been a bad play. Don't run it with Marshawn at the 1.
Yeah, I didn't
because if you don't get it, the clock keeps running. And the other thing, and again, I don't know if this is what happened, but this is what I knew is a concern. If George Fant was injured and the Seahawks were forced to take an injury timeout, not only would they get a delay of game penalty, they'd also lose 10 seconds off the clock, even though it was a running clock, even though the clock had stopped on the spike. So that would have gone from 22 seconds down to 12 seconds, which means that you're lucky to get 2 plays out of that.
It was weird because it's like a perfect storm of weirdness, and people don't acknowledge that. And it frustrates me. And then, Marshawn Lynch thinking he's not going to be in the game anymore, so he's got his beanie on.
Right, because he was not a part of the 2-minute package, which is totally understandable.
Yeah. But again, that's why it comes out. There's some staff member probably should have had him around saying, if we get down there, we may use you. So you need to be over here and ready. But again, it felt like there was a spell cast over the whole the stadium. No, from coaches to players to referee, except for one referee, to the announcers for the TV cast, nobody was ready. Nobody understood. And that's very, very weird. It was one of those weird moments. But
super weird.
To be honest, and this is the last thing I'll say on it, it's the first time this season I wanted Darrell Bevel to be the offensive coordinator. And the reason is, it sounds stupid, but the reason is Darrell Bevel in that situation wouldn't have called for the spike. He always had that play, he always had Russell Wilson have that play, if this works out, then we just run this play. We always disdained the spike under Bevel, right? And I feel like they would have gone up there, maybe even fake the spike and run it, or just run up there and just run a really, really quick play. Just, it's the same as a spike. You just run a quick, out, or run a quick fade, just throw it. It's the same as the spike, but we get one more chance at it.
Right. We saw that when we still had Jimmy Graham, where they would run a hurry up and they would basically say, hey, we're going to look to see if they cover Jimmy Graham. If not, it's a quick pass to him and we get 3 more yards.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, they would. I feel like from the 1 they would just immediately round.
Yeah.
Oh well.
All right. Well, let's move on to topic number 4 real quick, and let's going to talk about the Philadelphia Eagles, the NFC East champion Philadelphia Eagles.
Yeah.
Ross,
do they feel like champions?
Hey man, they're 9-7, better than 8-8. So yeah.
Better than 7-9.
Yeah, I mean, for a long time, I think everyone thought that the NFC East was going to have a 7-9 winner. So congratulations to the Eagles for pulling that out. But Ross, I want to know, is this the best playoff matchup for the Seahawks to make a Super Bowl?
It's the best start of it, yeah, for sure. Right? We've gone there. We've beat them before. They're even more beat up. We're going to get Diggs back, and they're still throwing to whoever they can find in the unemployment line this week. So, yeah, I mean, it's the NFL. They're all professionals. Even if the guys are off the practice squad, those practice squad guys, are still among the top 200 people in the world at what they do. So it's still going to be a competitive game, I believe. But this is who you want to fight in the first round, isn't it? You want to get the guy who's on his last legs. So I don't think it's a question. And then most likely with this route we've been given, most likely, unless Minnesota does something amazing, as I understand it, next week we would play San Francisco. And the way that game ended, you feel like there's even more of a sense of unfinished business and also confidence. We can't take them. We beat them once, we lost to them once, but even when we lost to them, if anything goes even a slightly different or the refs call a penalty right, we win. So you got to figure like this is a great matchup, right? Like great road for us, I think. A confidence-inspiring one, I think. No?
Zeb, what about you? Do you think that this is a better way for the Seahawks to get to a Super Bowl versus being the 3 seed?
Yeah, I mean, I think the way things played out, this is best case scenario for us. Like Ross mentioned, moving on to play probably at San Francisco. I mean, this is the NFL. This is the playoffs. You can't say this enough. Any given Sunday, right? Nobody's going into one of these games to lay down and die. The Eagles are going to. They want to win as bad as we do. So, if the weather's weird, it could be a hard fought game no matter what. But just based on how things played out, I think it's the best possible course to get to where we want to be. And I think we're in a good position to win a couple of games in a row. So as much as I wanted that win versus the 49ers, ultimately it'll end up being beneficial.
Yeah, what's interesting about this is, one, it is a repeat of a game that's already happened. Seattle has already gone to Philadelphia. They've already won. It was a one-score game. We're talking 17-9, so, no one was really running away with it. Baras said earlier that, this is a game, if you look at the replay, it looks like a team that Seattle could have just, railroaded and won a bunch more, but because of maybe the weather and other things, it made it so that game was a lot closer, even though I felt like for the most part that was a pretty comfortable win for Seattle. Real quick, here is the Eagles injury report based upon their website. So they had 2 players that did not participate, wide receiver Nelson Aguilar and running back Miles Sanders. They still have Boston Scott as their other running back. And limited was Derek Barnett at end, DT Fletcher Cox, tight end Zach Ernst, left tackle, I believe, Lane Johnson, Sidney Jones, corner, Avante Maddox, corner, and Jalen Mills, corner. So for the limited practice, we're talking about 6 starters, essentially, that are not there, and 2 guys that didn't practice at all. Those are other starters. So they're missing a bunch of people that are hurt, but the Seahawks injury report actually is not that much better. You've got 2 guys that are out for the year, probably Malik Turner, or no, not Malik Turner, Michael Kendricks, who's out. Dwayne Brown is a potential, maybe he could play not this week, but the following week. But you have rest going to Micah Potty, Joey Hunt, Malik Turner, and Jadeveon Clowney. Quandre Diggs is limited, so he's hopeful to come back, and Luke Wilson is a full participation. So we got a few more days before the full injury report comes out before the game. But these are 2 super banged up teams. I think the biggest difference is Seattle has probably looked better banged up than the Eagles have, and I do think that I would probably rather play a banged up Eagles team than a healthier Vikings team, who I don't think the Vikings are anything impressive. I'm not saying I'm afraid of them, but I give the Eagles a slight edge and better matchup for what Seattle's going to try and do this weekend.
Sorry, the last part, you think the Eagles are a better matchup for us or for them?
I think it's a better matchup for Seattle. I think we have a chance to play really well against the Eagles than we would if we had faced the Vikings.
I think the Vikings are a pretty well coached, pretty sound team. So I mean, not that the Eagles aren't, but again, always choose the guy that's got no wide receivers.
Right.
And Ertz is not going to play, right? So, I mean...
No, he's got a lacerated kidney. I mean...
And bruised ribs, so...
So, yeah.
I feel like the kidneys... I think it's the ribs that'll actually keep him out. I mean, like, while you're playing a game, it doesn't really matter to you. Ribs. I mean, if your kidney's lacerated, it's the playoffs. But your ribs, like, it's hard. Sorry?
A kidney is an internal organ. I don't know how you could play with anything that's Lacerated means it's like cut up. So
Right. I mean, like Brian Greasy, dude, played with a ruptured spleen. Like you can, it's internal, right? Like they don't have nerve hurt that bad. Like it's not good, but it's the playoffs though. I mean, it's not a good situation clearly, but I feel like even in the more wise and enlightened 2020 era we live in, I still feel like football players are football players and still going out like, well, it's just my kidney, I'll play. I mean, it's not like the 80s and 70s. I once watched Joe Ferguson play a playoff game with a broken leg.
All right. Well, how about this? If we assume that the Seahawks beat the Eagles, would you rather play in San Francisco or in Green Bay in the divisional round?
San Francisco.
I
mean, Green Bay is a team, in my opinion, but I want San Francisco again. And I think the team wants San Francisco again.
Yeah, I definitely feel like we play San Francisco again. So
I think we beat them if we play them again, to be honest, even in their own stadium.
We probably beat the Packers too, but, give me
Green Bay, weird things could happen. Like I went to a playoff game in Green Bay, and at half, like we were kicking ass for the first 10 minutes, and then all of a sudden they dialed up a snowstorm. You couldn't really see the other side of the stadium. So
yeah, we had that 14-0 lead, and we couldn't run anymore.
Yeah, like nobody even like packed the right cleats. Like they couldn't even switch them at halftime, and it was a bizarre game I was at. Like Tony and I were there, and
is that the game that you ruined a camera, or is someone ruined?
That was the game I ruined a camera. It was an eventful weekend. I was on Green Bay radio for a few minutes. They interviewed me. They wanted to get like a sound bite, but then they're like, dude, this guy knows what he's talking about. So like I talked to them for a few minutes. Yeah, it was cool. Green Bay fans were cool, but it was weird. Like we were kicking ass, and they were like, "Oh yeah, you know what? Fuck you. We're pulling up snow. What do you do now?" And all of a sudden, you literally couldn't see the other side of the stadium. I've never seen anything like that. It was crazy. Yeah, so I'm kind of traumatized. I don't want to play there anymore. I don't want to go there. Well, I don't want to go there in January.
I mean that's what I wrote on the forum. I'm saying I'm not afraid of any team. I probably don't want to play the Saints of any of the possible teams that we would face. I don't want to play them, but I'm not afraid of playing the Packers. I'm not afraid of playing the Niners. I'm only afraid of playing in Green Bay because of their weather. I don't think Aaron Rodgers has been as good as he has been historically. No. I think their run game is pretty legit, but them as a whole, I don't think they're like leaps and bounds that much better than everyone else.
I agree.
All right. Well, let's move on to some predictions here. So, gentlemen, Ross, I'm going to hit you up with the first predictions. We're going to go a little bit light on the predictions this week. But what's your final score, Seahawks at Eagles?
24-10.
Comfortable win. I don't think we've seen one of those since like week 4.
I know it's not very realistic, but whatever.
Is that
27-16 Seahawks.
Okay.
That's a comfortable win as well. That's 2 scores.
Birdfinger has 27-20 Seahawks. I'm thinking it's going to be a lower 20 games. I'm going to say 21-10. I think the Seahawks are going to do really well. Maybe the Eagles get a late score, maybe make it a 1-score game, but I'll say 21-10 right now.
But can our defense hold them to 10?
Yes, which is surprising because, I don't know who they're going to throw the ball to.
What's that guy? That guy had his first catch ever.
Oh, the last time we played them? Ward, was it?
They like to throw the ball now to Ward. That dude gets like 8 catches a game for like 50 yards.
Yeah.
And then Goddard.
Their backup tight end.
Their backup tight end that some people still use in fantasy, even though he's a backup because they like to throw there. Like that's going to be their main targets, right? And then that new, what was the guy, the running back with the weird
Boston
name?
Scott.
Yeah, that guy's. He doesn't seem like he's bad, right?
No, but I also think that this is a playoff game.
They tell me the running backs don't matter, so I mean that works out for us as well.
I also look at the last 3 games that the Eagles had to play. They had to play the Giants, Washington, and Dallas, right?
That's a pretty nice schedule.
Who is more likely to have MVP game, Russell Wilson or Carson Wentz?
Russell Wilson, right? I mean, like, I don't know.
Yeah, Russell.
I don't think the weather's going to be very nice for either of them to have like an amazing game. Russell Wilson's more likely.
I think what's going to happen, and this is what my prediction is, I think the Seahawks are going to rely a lot on that ground game with Travis Homer and with Lynch, maybe even Turbin, to really kind of like control the game. So Russ is not going to have the stats. He's maybe going to throw 20, 25 times. But I could see Carson Wentz having like a huge passing game. But it doesn't ultimately lead to a whole lot because, it's just not enough for them to do anything. So say stat-wise, Wentz is going to have the bigger wow stats MVP-like game. All right, Ross. Who is going to see the absence of their injuries impact them more first? Is it going to be the Eagles that are going to see like a loss hurting them? Or is it going to be the Seahawks where a player that's already injured and already ruled out of the game, their absence is going to hurt them first? Is it going to be the Seahawks or the Eagles?
Eagles, because they're probably going to get the ball first, I feel like, and then Zach Ertz not being there just messes them.
Zeb,
also, like, they're missing their tackle. I mean, geez. The first time they try to run a play, right? They're missing their left tackle and their tight end. Good luck with that.
I wonder what that's like.
I'll say the Seahawks because even though Ertz is out, Cody Barton is going to make whoever their tight end is look like Zach Ertz.
I think that's a possibility. We don't know who's going to be missing first and foremost. So I think the Eagles are going to be the one that are going to be hurt more by their injuries for this game because they just have so many more that we know are likely not to play at all. I think they'll see that impact first and foremost.
I think if we get Diggs back, it goes a long. We're missing a lot of people, and it all hurts. But Diggs is probably the biggest one. You could probably make a case right now for Diggs being our sort of defensive MVP. I know he's only played like 5 games, but we look so different with Diggs back there.
Yeah, for sure.
Every part of our defense does. So if we get Diggs back, it's huge. It's huge. It makes the pass rush better. It means the linebackers can play the middle zones better. It means the the strong safety can play more relaxed. McDougal. It means the cornerbacks trust that they've got like a real safety back there, and that they end up playing looser, and they end up being able to go for the ball more. Even you get more interceptions when he's back there. So
yeah,
Diggs is everything.
Which would be a potential reason for the Seahawks to lose? Missed tackles on defense or lack of a pass rush on defense?
Lack of bad tackling. That probably cost us the San Francisco game, to be honest.
I'll say lack of pass rush.
Oh, contrarian, huh?
I'm gonna go and say it's the missed tackles too, and the reason for that is they're just so much more prevalent this year. Like I can't remember a year where our tackling has been as bad. I mean, Birdfinger's saying that it's the lack of pass rush, but they've kind of survived all year with a bad pass rush. So I'm not sure if that's what's really going to be the reason for them to lose this game.
Like, people don't talk about it because people are so wrapped up in how the game ended. But last game, if you actually tackled even halfway decently, like we win that game easy. Like Deebo Samuel, like on his, jet sweep after jet sweep and all this crap, just running through people. Tackle that dude.
Yeah.
Ran through 5 people.
Now, to the defense's credit, they made huge adjustments in the second half, and we weren't seeing that as much. But I do agree.
Have jet sweeps in the first half because it's not a surprise. Everybody's running them on us this year. So you know what? Self-scout. Going in, they're going to try that. Everybody else. This game, the Eagles will try it. Ward will have a jet sweep to the left. He will.
Yeah. All right. And the last predictions. Who's going to win in the wild card round? Bills at Texans, Titans at Patriots, and Vikings at Saints.
Okay, one at a time. First one.
Bills at Texans. Who do you got winning?
Bills.
Zeb?
Bills.
I'm going to say Texans. I think J.J. Watt's going to come back. Birdfinger's got the Bills as well. But Deshaun Watson, I think it's time to shine. Titans at Patriots. Who's going to win?
Titans in a shocker.
Ooh.
Titans.
I want the Titans to win, but I don't know what you guys are smoking. Patriots are going to win. Birdfinger also calling for the Titans.
It's going to be Henry all day, man.
It could be. And the NFC game, Vikings at Saints.
Man, I want the Vikings to upset them because I don't want the tournament. But it's going to be the Saints.
Yeah, Saints are.
Yeah, the Saints. They only the Saints could get screwed out of a bye week because of a non-pass interference call, right?
In a game that they have not even in.
Yeah, the last game of the year, they have a bye week ready. If they just get that extra call that they should have had for the Seahawks, but it is what it is.
Brutal.
Gentlemen, that's our podcast for New Year's Day. Special shout-outs.
Shout out to DK Metcalf for being a man and catching with his hands, scoring a tug, and then swimming on the grass.
It's a nice touchdown.
Shout out to Yumi, who has been kicking ass, and I'm really proud of her. And she's been working hard, and she's been helping me with some stuff. And yeah, she made my 2019 so much better than 2018. So thank you, Yumi.
Shout out to the gentlemen that are podcasting with me, Ross and Zeb. Appreciate you guys. Shout out to Birdfinger and all the people that do check us out. Please go to hawkscast.com. Check us out on Twitter at Seahawks Podcast and Seahawks Forum. I'm Sam. There's Zeb and Ross, and we are the Hawkscast Podcast, brought to you by the Hawkscast Forum. And go Hawks!
Go Hawks!
Hawks.